My friend Ashley Monet and I, we really wanted to do a Halloween collab, but because we live a little far away from each other, our options were limited, so we landed on sending each other squishies and doing a squishy makeover. Now, this is a Halloween collab after all, so we have one rule, and that rule is that you have to use at least one part of each squishy you receive to create your own FrankenSquishy. I sent Ashley some pretty cute squishies, so I don't know what she's gonna do with those, but she didn't seem worried. She got the box and she was like, "The squishies are here, thank you, girl." When I received mine, I was freaking out. I was like, what am I gonna do with these? Now, of course, I have an idea, but to test that idea, it basically means I need to destroy these. So I cannot wait to get started and see what happens. Let's get creative. Here's a closer look at the 3 squishies my friend Ashley sent me. They look like they're so happy to be here. Oh no. Now I feel bad because I'm going to cut them up. Here I have all of the tools ready for torturing them and combining them into my own Frankenstein monster. I started by sanding all of the squishes before cutting them. I thought it was going to be easier to sand them when they were whole as opposed to sanding little pieces of foam. When I was done, it was time to choose which parts of which squishy I was going to use. So it's the ears from this one, gonna put those aside with the whole watermelon, and I also need the ears and feet from the cat. I'm sorry. Because it was really hard for me to come up with an idea on how to combine at least one piece of each of these, I did create a sketch that I'm using for cutting, but I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to spoil the idea. I want to see if you can guess what I'm making as we move forward. So the feet and ears from the cat, I polished those a little bit with the scissors, and then I started to figure out how to put the feet on the watermelon. I cut them a little bit to create a slot for the watermelon to fit on top. I just didn't want the feet to look like they're stuck on, but like they are coming out of the triangle. After a few adjustments on the feet, I decided I needed the face from the cat too, so I cut that off. I trimmed it off a bit to make it rounder instead of the more triangular shape that it had, and then I cut out a circle from the middle of the watermelon to fit that into. You'll see. I also grabbed this piece of leftover foam from the cat and I tried to cut it and mold it with my scissors into a semi-sphere that I'm going to use later. So after a little cleanup, it was time to glue everything together. All through this process, I was so incredibly curious about what Ashley was up to, but we have not shared anything at all. The only thing I sent her was this picture when I was done destroying her squishies. Happy Halloween! The first thing I glued were the feet using a heat gun and fabric glue. I am really grateful that I'm such a big Mariah Elizabeth fan that I've seen all of her squishy makeover videos and I've learned about the process for doing this. Because honestly, I don't think I would have been able to glue this together without learning she uses a heat gun with fabric glue. The feet looked a little weird glued on there, so I took them off and I had to cut a little bit of the watermelon too for them to look like they fit and that they were originally part of the triangle. Doesn't look perfect, but better, and a little extra trimming helped. Then I put some glue on that hole I created and inserted the face. I just made it fit in there super snug and it worked great. Very happy with that part of the procedure. So it was time to glue the ears, but after I glued them, I realized I wasn't crazy about the scallop shape from the koala. So I trimmed them off a little bit, making them rounder, and glued them back on. Now it was time to attach the cat's ears, which I'm going to use as little arms. And I was playing with them until I figured out the best way to do it. And I thought that was to cut out a couple of triangles from the big triangle and insert the arms in, just like I did with the face. So it looks like they always belong there. I had to take off the ears one more time to fix them because they looked off. I ended up taking a bit of the triangle out again to make them fit in. And finally, I glued the half sphere I carved on top. It was time to make everything look smoother with some puffy paint. Again, thanks for Mariah for figuring this all out and showing us how it's done. I try to fill all of the gaps and smooth out rough areas and all of my mistakes. I did my best, but honestly, this was my first time doing this and it's a hot mess. I also used the puffy paint to give texture to that half sphere by creating some lines on top. Next day, the puffy paint was super dry and it was time to cover all of it with white paint so I could have a blank canvas to paint my character on. This was a long process, long, because it took 3 layers of paint for it to look entirely white, and of course I had to do the back of the squishy too. I spent a couple of days literally watching paint dry because we're still having scheduled power outages here, so I could not help the drying process at all. Now that it's all covered in white, I would love to know what your guess is for what this character is. Go ahead, you can pause the video and let me know. I'm crazy curious and I think you can probably guess right now. Did you guess? Because here's the most obvious clue as I start painting an orange stripe along the middle of the triangle. I know it looks red, but it was supposed to be orange. I mixed the color and completely failed. For the second layer, I tried to lighten it a bit, but it was still terrible. So I let that dry for a bit longer, and then I came back in with the orange straight from the bottle to see if that was better, but really, it wasn't. Maybe it was the brand of fabric paints I got, I don't know. It was so hard for me to get used to it. It's very rubbery, like slime. I don't know if you can see when I dip my brush into it and then pull out, there's like little strings of paint because of how slimy it is. It was almost like painting with glue. But I moved on to the bottom of the squishy, which I wanted to paint yellow again directly from the bottle, but again it was a little bit too dark. So I mixed it with white and that was better. I was really getting frustrated about how hard this paint was to use, so I got a different brand that I found here in Ecuador. This one's made in Colombia. Tried it and it just felt more natural, less like glue at least. Next day, I decided to lighten up the orange again with yellow, and this shade was much better, but still that paint was giving me trouble. I have some footage when the power went off and the squishy was drying, and after hours you can still hear how sticky it is. So on the next morning, I decided to switch to the other brand of fabric completely and just mix my own colors in these little containers I have. I swear this video has made me even a bigger fan of MarieLacey. Going through this process really shows me what a rock star she is and the amazing amount of work she puts into her creations. I'm grateful for all the work she's done, not only because she figured it out and she shows us how it's done, but also because she makes it look effortless. And let me tell you, painting and transforming a squishy, it's actually a lot of work. I didn't expect it to be this long, it took me so many days. But don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful process and I really did enjoy it, but it's a commitment. And I understand why sometimes when she does squishy unboxings, she gets so many squishies that people have started to try to make over but gave up because, again, this is a commitment. With my new colors, the process started to feel better, painting felt more natural, and I tried to make the place where the two colors meet blend a little instead of being a hard line. Of course, now you can tell I painted the triangle as a candy corn, but what you may have not guessed already is that this candy corn is the Halloween costume a little Frankenstein mouse is wearing. And because he is a cute little monster, I'm painting his face and body parts with green. And yes, that green needed 3 layers to look nice. I gotta tell you, every second I spent on this squishy, I was wondering how Ashley was doing and what she was making. That made the collab even more fun. Finally, next day, so 5th day of working on my squishy, and all of the base colors were dry. Because this took a while, I had time to think about it, and I bought a fabric marker for drawing all the details on. I found this one locally. The packaging is in Portuguese, but at the bottom it does say fabric marker in Spanish and in English. So I used the marker to draw all of the little details for my design, and I drew his face, and the marker was perfect for this. So much easier for me than doing the details with a small brush or a dotting tool. I also bought a purple and green marker to add details, but those were terrible. 0 opacity, and their transparency made them look muddy. So I ended up using paint for the colorful details and, of course, white paint for the eyes. In larger areas, I wasn't sold on the opacity of the black marker, so I went over those with paint. I wanted to see if maybe the green would work on top of the black, but I mean, you cannot even see it, and as you can see on my hand, it works. It's just very, very transparent. Bad markers. I was forgetting an important detail for my character, and that was that he needed a little handle to carry his jack-o'-lantern to fill with candy. He's a trick-or-treater, you know, great costume too. So I broke a piece of this huge paper clip I have, painted it black, and while that dried, I worked on making those eyes a little bit more symmetrical. I do want him to have different eyes, but at least I want them to be symmetrical. I tried the green and the purple on top of the white paint to see if that was any better, but sadly no. When the paint on the paper clip was dry, I attached that handle to the pumpkin with fabric glue, and then painted over the joint once it was dried. Painted the black of Frankie's eyes and went over everything more carefully with my marker, adding more little details like stitching all over because, you know, he's made out of a lot of parts like any Frankenstein monster is. I ended up using acrylic paint markers for the color of the eyes and the eyes of the jack-o'-lantern. I think because these areas are so tiny, they won't crack when you squish the squishy and that it will be okay. That was the last of it, and before Frankie's beauty shots, let me show you those 3 original squishies again so that you'll remember their sacrifice and see their transformation into trick-or-treating Frankie. He's far from perfect because I made so many mistakes, but this time those mistakes fit the theme, so it's okay. It was my first time doing this after all, and it was hard, but I had so much fun making it. Now, I'm crazy excited that I finally get to run to Ashley's channel to see what she made with the squishies I sent her. I literally can't wait. I hope you're running to her channel too, and that I will see you next Friday with a brand new video. Have the most wonderful day. Bye!